in that position, it would be impossible to breathe. They would have to push up to free up the diaphragm so that the lungs could actually work. And so every time he speaks on the cross, he has to push up like that on his feet. Jesus is crucified. Welcome to Bible Study Hub. I'm Ann Wiggins. We are in John chapter 19. We've been going through the story of, well, the whole book of John, but the story of the arrest, the trials, and now the crucifixion of Jesus. And today is going to be a rough one. It's John chapter 19, verses 17 to 22. And the next few days are just going to be, it's just hard. It's just hard to think about. But we're so grateful, aren't we, that Jesus died for us. So let's just go ahead and dive in, and we'll do our best to get through this passage today. It says this in John 19, 17 to 22, and I'm reading from the Legacy Standard Bible as always. They took Jesus, therefore, and he went out bearing his own cross to the place called the place of the skull, which is called in Hebrew Golgotha. I knew I wasn't going to make it through this. I'm just going to have to cry through it. Sorry. There they crucified him, and with him 2 other men, one on either side, and Jesus in between. And Pilate also wrote an inscription and put it on the cross. It was written, Jesus the Nazarene, the King of the Jews. Therefore, many of the Jews read this inscription, for the place where Jesus was crucified was near the city, and it was written in Hebrew, Latin, and Greek. So the chief priests of the Jews were saying to Pilate, do not write the King of the Jews, but that he said, I am the King of the Jews. Pilate answered, what I have written, I have written. Okay, I'm going to have to keep stopping this. We're just going to have to get through it. Okay, so let's talk about crucifixion here, because if you've never studied what it entailed, then you're missing some of the depth of this story. They would lay the cross down on the ground because Jesus was not the only one to be crucified. He was the only Son of God, obviously, but there were other prisoners who had been and then subsequently would be crucified. So they would throw the cross down on the ground, and then they would throw Jesus down onto it, which would probably rub dirt and little stones into his ripped flesh from the flogging. And then they would use enormous nails, like this long, to nail his hands, which would really go through the wrist, so it wouldn't rip the skin. And of course, this would be major nerve damage to go through this area, and just continuous agonizing pain up and down Jesus's arms. After securing him like that, the soldiers would then tilt the cross upright and let it fall into the designated spot in the ground so it wouldn't fall over. The weight and the impact of setting this in the ground would dislocate his shoulders and his elbows, which fulfilled actually Psalm 22:14, where it says, I am poured out like water, and all my bones are out of joint. My heart is like wax. It is melted within me. Oh man, I don't know if I can get through this today. Then his feet were to cross over each other, and they would nail his feet to the cross as well, with his knees bent. So this would sever major nerves and possibly even an artery, causing shooting horrific pain up the legs. Because of the way our diaphragms work, in that position, it would be impossible to breathe. And so in order to be able to breathe in and out, they would have to push up to free up the diaphragm so that the lungs could actually work. And so every time he speaks on the cross, he has to push up like that on his feet, which means when he says, Father, forgive them, they don't know what they're doing, he had to push up to utter those words with his bare back just scraping against that rough, splintery wood every time. Eventually, crucifixion victims would basically suffocate. They would have all this carbon dioxide that would build up in the lungs because they couldn't breathe. It would eventually collapse the lungs, causing heart failure. And that's typically how they died, was through suffocation. But it took a really really, really long time. So this is what Jesus endured on the cross, all the while being just berated by criminals on either side. We're told that in Luke 23, that one of the criminals actually continually heaped insults on him, but the other one, after initially starting that way, ends up repenting, and Jesus says, "Today you will be with me in paradise." Unbelievable. There was also a sign, obviously, above his head that we read today that says, "Jesus the Nazarene, King of the Jews," which was an enormous just poke in the eye from Pilate to the Jewish religious leaders. So there he hung, just absolutely unrecognizable, barely human looking, I'm sure, with mockers all over the place. And the Jews tried to make Pilate change the sign to say, he says he is the King of the Jews. But Pilate wouldn't do it, as we read yesterday. And so it was that the true king of not just the Jews, but the king of the whole universe, hung on a wooden cross with wood that he had created thousands of years before, as he spoke it into existence, that wood, those trees would become an instrument for his own death. The people that he knew before they were ever born just rejected, scorned, and mocked him, and now were murdering him. Everything that was used to crucify him, including the metal from those sharp nails, he had created. The very breath in the lungs of those who hung him there was provided by God, and they used that air to hurl insults at him. The whole thing is just so horrific. And while he hung there for hours, being screamed at, mocked, spit on, he took the wrath of God that was destined for me and you. I don't know what that actually looks like. The Bible never describes what that wrath of God specifically looked like. I mean, we can see the cross and its awfulness. So I don't know if it was just too awful to talk about or beyond our comprehension. I'm not sure. But here's what I know is that what Jesus did on that cross, he did because he loves you. And even today, he is repeatedly blasphemed, cursed, mocked by sinners. And through all of that, he continues to extend the offer and the gift of salvation. People like me who deserve hell are offered heaven because of what Jesus did on that cross. I often end my studies by encouraging anybody who's watching who has been trying to work their way to God, or maybe you've just dismissed God altogether. I don't know you. I don't know what your story or your thoughts are. But if you would just take some time, please, to think about this and to read and understand this story, and to know that as Jesus hung on that cross, suffering in ways that we can't even begin to understand or comprehend, he did it for you. He took the wrath of God meant for sinners on himself, and he offers you forgiveness. If you've never cried out to him, repented of your sins, and asked him to forgive you and to apply that payment to your life, I hope that today will be the day of salvation for you. It's a one and done thing, by the way. It's not something, I mean, we ask for forgiveness because we ruin our relationship with God by sinning against him, and that has to be restored. But the cover of forgiveness is permanent. He has forgiven all of your sins, from the A to Z, from the beginning to the end, for what you've done in the past to all the way to the last sin you commit before you die. It's all paid for. He paid for it all on the cross. But you have to come to that point of recognition that you need that forgiveness. So I hope that you will do that today if you've not done it. Thanks for bearing with me. I'm sorry. I couldn't stop crying. I've cried all week. It's been a rough week, but I mean, like really rough for me, right? After what Jesus did, it breaks my heart to read it. That's all. I just have a hard time with it. But I'm so grateful. So anyway, I hope you can join me tomorrow. Nobody's going to come back tomorrow. I'll try to hold it together tomorrow. We'll see. For Bible Study Hub, our videos go live at 6 a.m. Monday through Friday, and that's on Facebook and YouTube. So carry with you today just the wonder of what Jesus did for us. And I'll hopefully see you tomorrow.